Thanks for joining us on another busy night of all things people, power, and politics. This is The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. More of you are making this your home for unbiased political news. And you know what? We thank you for that. So let's do what we do and get you out of that social media echo chamber. What's real, what's not? Toss that phone aside and let's get you up to date. One of the names we thought might join the race for governor says thanks, but no thanks. Why the previous Republican nominee, Tudor Dixon, isn't running. And Councilwoman Mary Waters in Detroit and Mayor Ethan Baker of Troy on the state of the gubernatorial race. Also tonight, crooks using AI to impersonate Secretary of State Marco Rubio, highlighting a bigger problem. These deep fakes are getting more real. We're talking with AI expert Brent Yaks about what to watch out for. Well, we begin tonight with President Trump's trade war, because just a day after hitting smaller trading partners with new import taxes, the president slaps a big one on Brazil. But not for the reason you might think. The 50% import tax is because President Trump is upset over the nation's treatment of its former president, Jair Bolsonaro. You see, Bolsonaro is on trial for trying to overturn his 2022 election loss. He's already being ruled ineligible to run in the year 2030. Trump sees Bolsonaro as a friend and actually hosted him at Mar-a-Lago in 2020 while both were still in power. Now, he used a familiar phrase when announcing the tariff on Brazil, calling the case a witch hunt against that president. This comes as President Trump hikes tariffs on some countries ranging from 20 to 30%.
We're seeing the tariffs on countries around the world. We're not seeing any inflation because basically they're eating the tariffs, and they're eating it because they cheat us.
Small businesses operate on razor-thin margins, week to week or even day to day. They do not have the ability to absorb the cost placed on them by the crushing and overly broad Trump tariffs.
Now, the Brazil tariff is different from his import taxes on other countries around the world. President Trump says those taxes are based on trade imbalances. Still no deal yet on a proposed ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, but the Trump administration claims they're getting closer. This latest proposal would see a 60-day pause in fighting in Gaza. President Trump is pushing both sides to accept the deal, but so far there haven't been any major breakthroughs.
Take out Hamas, and we're going to make sure that Gaza no longer poses a threat to Israel or to anyone else.
I will tell you, we're getting very close to a deal. We want to have peace. We want to get the hostages back, and I think we're close to doing it.
U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff is headed to Qatar this week to help with negotiations. 10 living hostages would be released as part of this deal, along with the remains of several others killed in captivity. Now, to some of the other big stories we're following at this hour, beginning here, the race for governor. Tudor Dixon says she's not running for governor or Senate. You'll remember she was a Republican nominee 3 years ago, losing to Governor Whitmer. She says her goal is to keep advancing President Trump's policies here in Michigan. The Supreme Court refusing to let Florida enforce an immigration law making it a crime for people living in the U.S. illegally to enter the Sunshine State. It keeps the law on hold while a legal challenge works through the court system. The justices didn't explain their decision. Governor Ron DeSantis signed the law in February. Immigrants' rights groups sued, saying the issue is a federal one and beyond the power of the states. Now, a similar Texas law has also been blocked by the courts. The Trump administration is once again sending some weapons to Ukraine as it fights its war with Russia. That's a week after the Pentagon ordered the pause of some deliveries. It's not clear tonight when the weapons started moving, but the pause reportedly caught the White House by surprise. The Pentagon denied Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth acted without consulting with the president. Turning now to Medicaid, a new report released by Massachusetts Democratic Senator Ed Markey is giving a better look at how many hospitals are at risk because of Medicaid cuts. 3 of those hospitals are right here in Michigan. The data looks at 2 factors: being in the top 10% of Medicaid payer mix of rural hospitals or having 3+ years of a negative total margin. The 3 hospitals in Michigan are Carson City Hospital, north of Grand Rapids, McLaren Central Michigan in Mount Pleasant, and Ascension Borges Lee Hospital, which is southwest of Kalamazoo. Democrats have been warning that rural hospitals will feel that Medicaid cuts, especially putting them at risk of reducing services, turning into a clinic, or closer altogether. Last night on The Pulse, we took up the Medicaid conversation once again, and we have heard some say they're tired of this topic. But just remember, there are people out there with real fears that they might lose their own coverage or their loved one might. that they deserve. One of our guests last night was Katrina Mineta. She's an activist whose aunt is on Medicaid, and she talked about the new work requirements that were in the bill. In case you missed it, here's a part of that conversation.
I think that the real answer here is that most people on Medicaid already do work or they can't work. So where they're going to find people that aren't working that are able-bodied, I don't know. I think this is a heavily monitored issue. So it's already been proven that in Arkansas, people get, when they instill worker requirements, able-bodied people get dropped off Medicaid.
All right, that was just 20 seconds of a 9-minute-long conversation where we took your questions about Medicaid and also taxes to Katrina and financial advisor Dan Casey. If you want to watch the full episode, just scan the QR code on the bottom right of your screen. We know many people watch The Pulse the next day. Feel free to recommend this to a friend, perhaps if you think they'd like that conversation. You know, from the current administration to the previous one, former President Biden's ex-doctor refusing to answer questions by House Republicans. It's part of their investigation into Biden's health while in office. The House Oversight Committee claims some policies carried out during his term used the auto pen and therefore could be illegitimate if it's proven he was mentally incapacitated. Dr. Kevin O'Connor's lawyer says O'Connor invoked his Fifth Amendment right to not testify, saying he had no choice in part because of doctor-patient privilege. But as you can imagine, reaction was mixed on the Hill.
People invoke the Fifth when they have criminal liability. And, you know, that's what it would appear on the surface here.
It's kind of astounding to hear someone say, if you invoke the Fifth Amendment, that is only because you are guilty. We have a constitutional right that anyone who may be under fire can invoke.
President Biden has strongly denied he wasn't in a right state of mind at any point while he was in office, calling the claims, quote, ridiculous and false. Well, turning back to the race for governor coming up right after the break, Tudor Dixon is not running. Some other big names on both sides. And yes, Mike Duggan on his own side as an independent. What are the chances of him actually taking a large percentage of votes away? Where the race stands next. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Here now to talk about the race for governor, Detroit City Council member Mary Waters and Troy Mayor Ethan Baker, a Republican and a Democrat, obviously in most of their work that they do, nonpartisan roles, just trying to help their respective cities in Detroit and Troy. But we thank you both for joining us here today.
Thank you.
So Elon Musk the other day made some news, and he said, we are going to start a new party called America Party. Councilwoman Waters, when you heard that at first, what went through your mind?
Just another opportunity to split the votes, because that's exactly what happens. I don't know how he's going to pull that off, but that's exactly what it means. Mostly we have either Democrats or Republicans, and it's very difficult to get people to go over to another side like that. So it ended up splitting the votes.
Well, let's take a look at some numbers. Edwin Research, which does a lot on polling, basically said that in the last election, that when they polled the people who were at the polls, they said 34% identified as independent, 34% identified as Republicans, and 32% identified as Democrats. That means that 34% of the people identified as an independent and fewer people identified as a Democrat. Mayor Ethan Baker, is this writing on the wall for the parties?
No, well, here's the thing. I think that poll doesn't go all the way into the full look at how people really vote. I think most of those independents, if you ask them, do they typically vote with one party or another, the answer is usually yes. Most independents will say, well, yes, I'm an independent, but 95% of the time I vote Republican or I vote Democrat. So I don't know that that's actually as much of a large block as it seems.
But what does that speak to in terms of people feeling disenfranchised, people feeling that they're not getting what they deserve?
Well, I think we all want to feel independent,
frustrated
right?
as to what they feel. Absolutely. They are tired of the various partisan things. And we're seeing that more and more. People don't necessarily want to align themselves with the Republican side or the Democratic side. They want to go somewhere down the middle.
Do you think the Kamala Harris campaign, in some sense, was a rebuke from many voters out there who said the Democratic Party used to say they're working for the working people? Do you think that reputation has faltered?
Well, I think with the Kamala Harris campaign, it was just something totally different. Frankly, I think there were issues on the table that people were pretty upset about during that time. There were a number of reasons, plus the fact that they used the fact that she was a female against her as well. There were a number of factors that played into Kamala Harris's campaign.
What do you think about her messaging in general and the Democratic Party's messaging, just as someone who is a political observer yourself?
I can't believe we're still talking about the Kamala Harris campaign. It seems like forever ago now, but
we'll move on from that.
Well, I think if you look at what people are talking about now, there's another split in the Democratic Party saying, are we a more progressive party that's focused on very specific issues, or do we want to go back to our working class roots, and do we realize that most people are in the middle? That's how I view it. Maybe as an outsider Republican a little bit.
And clearly her messages could have been much better. Messaging was really bad. I mean, she was not addressing the issues that matter to Americans.
And the reason we're bringing up that old election from a lifetime ago is because to know where you're headed, you have to know where you've been. And both parties have to really take a good look in the mirror and understand where we're headed. Mike Duggan has done that, the mayor of the city of Detroit. And he said that his father was a proud Reagan Republican. And he also said that if his father was alive today, he wouldn't recognize the Republican Party. Ethan Baker is a Republican. Do you think that's true?
I don't know Mike Duggan's father, but I couldn't answer
but
that.
As a Reagan Republican, you knew Reagan.
I did, and I do think there's a lot of Reagan Republicans still left in this party, and I think maybe they're flirting with some Trump MAGA type behavior. But at the core, people are who they are. They very rarely grow up and spend decades supporting a certain set of policies and then all of a sudden change. Those people are still here in this country. So I don't know that the Reagan Republicans are gone. I certainly come in contact with a lot of them. But, I think the party's definitely changed. Both parties have changed. I mean, people have changed dramatically. The social media has changed us. What we hear about, what we talk about has changed. So, yeah, there's going to be a realignment, I think, a little bit. But I don't know that we're ready to get rid of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. I don't think it's that simple.
Mayor Ethan Baker, for those who aren't familiar, he's actually very much, he loves the city of Troy. He's the mayor of the city of Troy, but is spent a lot of time in California, kind of grew up there, and you knew the Reagans very well, Nancy and Reagan, the former First Lady and the former president. An interesting perspective. All right, Councilwoman Waters, let's talk about Mayor Mike Duggan and his fight as an independent. Basically, if you look at some numbers here, he says, and he was sitting right where you are just about a few months ago, and he told the Pulse, hey, look, if you have 30-some% of the people who say identify as an independent, why not go look into that and get those votes, and then also get the ones who are disenfranchised Republicans, disenfranchised Democrats, sick of the blue, tired of the red? Let's go. Will this work for him?
I think it will. Mayor Mike Duggan is brilliant a brilliant politician. He will figure it out. I think I said that a little bit earlier, a few months ago. Yes, he will, because people are looking for something different. And so when he go after those independents, he will get some Democratic votes in spite of it, and he's going to pull some Republican votes as well.
Mayor Ethan Baker, John James, Congressman, Mike Cox, former Attorney General, Tom Leonard, Eric Nesbitt. These are Republicans who have their names in their hat. Your thoughts on them?
Well, it seems to me that they pretty much all kind of fit a similar lane in the Republican Party, and I still think there's room for other Republicans to come in. I think there will be Republicans that still come into this race for governor. And the interesting thing about Mayor Duggan's campaign as an independent, I don't think you need to be an independent to bring people together and work across the aisle. I think the right Republican or the right Democrat can get votes from both parties.
Well, they haven't
succeed.
been doing it. The right Democrat, the right Republican. I mean, it has been chaos for the most part.
I agree that it's been different. Yeah, it has been different, and people are tired of it. But I think at their core, people still want to vote with the party that they feel comfortable with. And there's question as to whether Mike Duggan, he was out supporting and campaigning for Kamala Harris, right before he announced as an independent for governor. So there are people who know that.
It's probably because he didn't like the messages that Donald Trump was giving out. I'm pretty sure he just couldn't live, just like what's happening right now with the big nasty bill.
Well, let me ask you this. The nomenclatures that this bill gets
yourself there, I think.
After it's already been passed is amazing. Okay, let's talk about what he's up against. Is the reason Mayor Mike Duggan ran as an independent because he simply thought perhaps taking on a woman like Jocelyn Benson or an African-American who's powerful like Garland Gilchrist wouldn't be a wise choice in that category? Do you think that had something to do with it?
No, I don't.
No?
Well, maybe with Jocelyn Benson, because it would be very difficult to beat a Jocelyn Benson in a Democratic primary. It just would be. But in terms of Garland Gilchrist, not so much, because Garland has never been elected to anything. Think about it. He has never been elected. Even though he's lieutenant governor, he was basically, this was all Gretchen Whitmer. It was not him on the ballot.
You look at someone like Chris Swanson. He's the the sheriff out in Genesee County, a charismatic guy. During the Black Lives Matter parades, he knelt and prayed and sat with people all over the state, in particular in Genesee County. Will people remember that? And do you think his charisma that so many people talk about can actually trump some other things and other people's power?
You know, you wonder. He has to do a lot of work to make it happen. You're talking about here in Metro Detroit. Are they talking about him over on Fox 17 in Grand Rapids? I don't know. You know, that's the thing. The people without statewide name recognition have a big hurdle starting off, and Mayor Duggan faces that same hurdle, but he's out ahead of it because he's not going to have a primary. So
what's the topic? We have 15 seconds apiece left. What's the topic that any of these candidates who want to win have to address that they're not? Go ahead.
Well, I think that jobs in Michigan is always going to be number one. Our economy, if we can't afford our housing, if we can't afford our food, and we can't have jobs that pay for all those things, we're in trouble. So
jobs and the economy, without a doubt, because then we've got to have housing, we have to be and public safety too, though.
Yeah. And I would think education's on that list as well.
Oh, education is way up there. I mean, what are we going to do about education? Detroit certainly needs to do something about it.
Well, you've been working at that for a long time now, and we thank you, of course, for joining us here on The Pulse. Councilwoman Mary Waters and Mayor Ethan Baker of Troy, always great to see you both. Thanks for joining us. We are turning now to artificial intelligence. Scammers tried to impersonate this guy, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. We're telling you what to watch out for next on The Pulse. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. Joining us now to talk about AI and deep fakes in the wake of crooks trying to impersonate Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Occam CEO and AI expert Brent Yaxon. Brent, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to split this up into two segments real quick. We got about 6 minutes here. We got some great viewer questions. I want to get to those in a moment. But first, I want to ask you, how surprised were you to learn that somebody out there, through Signal, through a text message, and through a voicemail, impersonated the Secretary of State?
The only thing that was really surprising was that it was such a high-profile target. You know, typically that happens, but it doesn't happen to somebody like the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, right? So to see that was a little bit shocking, but I mean, the technology's been there for a little while, and nothing about what happened is really surprising at all, and I assume there's going to be more.
We don't want to encourage anyone to get into the nefarious business of doing this, but I do want to ask you, because you're an expert, how hard or how easy is it for someone to put this whole kind of scheme together?
So, for an example, I could create you, video, audio, sound like you, look like you, act like you, answer a phone like you in probably 25 minutes.
25 minutes. You do it on your phone?
You can do it, well, you do it through a number of different online apps that are out there, and then I could make it so it answers at a phone number that you call.
So the question that I have is, so fine, those are the bad guys doing the bad things, but then you have apps like Signal. We've heard, of course, about this app when Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's name, along with a couple other outside names, were on a very high-profile text string. Signal, why is that still being talked about today in terms of this activity? I mean, is there something going on with that app? Are there any apps out there that are safe?
It's just because it's a very popular app. There's other chat apps out there. There's WhatsApps. There's all these different ones that could be used as well. The real issue is that the Secretary of State and Pete Hegseth shouldn't be using Signal, right? There are other ways to do secure communications within the government that they should be leaning on. So the fact that Signal's being used here and there is really what's the issue.
Another issue that is really alarming in this particular situation is the fact that there was text messages, voicemails, and the Signal text that went to, I think, a U.S. sitting governor, a U.S. senator, and 3 foreign ministers. So now you're talking about accessing their information as someone's posing as though they're Marco Rubio. Even more disturbing.
It is. It's disturbing. But, you can buy any information anywhere. It's hard to say that, but there's a thing called the dark web, and you can go out there and you can buy different people's information, connection information, ways to contact them. So it does exist. We at least caught it quick. The FBI got on it very rapidly. I feel, concerned about countries that don't have that type of a law enforcement system to be able to manage this. What's happening in those countries? I
want to get to some viewer questions here. Michael, we thank you for writing in on The Pulse. You say the show's all about you, and we mean it. So let's get right to your question. You're saying, hey, AI is advancing pretty rapidly. In the near future, how will we be able to tell reality from AI? Are there regulations that people are talking about? Are there watermarks? Is there anything that someone can do?
There's a number of pieces of legislation that are out there right now that haven't moved in a little bit. Hopefully they will. This might actually cause some of them to move forward. One of them's the Deepfake Accountability Act, which would be those watermarks that they would stamp on anything that's created. There's another act called the No Fakes Act, which is basically trying to prevent any likeness from being duplicated in either voice or video. So there are some of those tools, but I mean, think about CGI when it came out. Look at Star Wars, the first one that came out in the 70s versus the last Avatar that came out. That's not AI, that's just CGI, right? And it got amazing. So yes, AI will get better.
But what people were able to do in Hollywood, now people are able to do on their computers. I mean, if you look at Forrest Gump, back in the day, there's a kind of a big famous shot of Forrest Gump shaking JFK's hand, and everyone was just, this is marvelous, this is amazing. But this is what people can do now. George, you have a question here on The Pulse. Thanks for writing in. You're asking us this. People were spooked and scared when computers went mainstream in the 1980s, and again when the internet came around. Mass unemployment didn't happen and society didn't collapse. Why would this time be any different? Your thoughts?
I agree. I think that's a great point, George. I believe that every technological advance creates a new opportunity. And I think every one of those major shifts creates jobs. I don't think this will be any different. I think there's going to be new jobs, new opportunity, new wealth that's created. And I think this is going to be a great move forward.
For guys like you, but what about some of the people on the other side of that camera who are going to college for other things? The next 4, 8, 12 years, are we preparing a workforce to work properly with AI and still be employed?
I think the same argument could be made when computers came out in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s when it really impacted the workforce and people were going to school on an abacus and then all of a sudden we have a calculator and the same type of a technological advancement that happened then. So yes, we'll have to adjust a little bit, but all technology advances.
Aaron Tobin is writing into The Pulse. And Aaron, thank you so much. This is an interesting one. You said, I got this fake message today from my son asking me to urgently call him. I don't have a son. Besides reporting it as spam and blocking the number, is there anything else we can do to prevent texts like this going out to other people? Well, the first clue is if you don't have a son and your son's texting you, you probably shouldn't give the money. But all joking aside, Aaron is saying, how do you stop this stuff?
Yeah, so this is a really good one. And what I would suggest here is that this is a common thing that's happening right now, and it's an attack that's happening where they're trying to get you to go to a bank and get money to them. Call your parents who aren't as technically savvy, generally speaking, and let them know this is a scam, and let them know that I'm not going to be calling you for this, or set up a way that they know it's you who's communicating with them, because they are getting phone calls, they are getting messages, and they might act on it. So ahead of time, address the situation with them.
I want to end with this. I don't want to get in the weeds with the budget bill in the last 40 seconds we have here, but there was a provision that was in there that basically said states cannot regulate AI, and the Senate said that's not okay, and they kicked that out of there. It's important for states to have sovereignty and to be able to control this stuff, yes?
I agree, and the state's already further along than the federal government is, right? So there's already things in place in certain states, California, New York, and others that have that. So yes, stopping that from already progressing and not learning from them instead, I think is a bad move.
Brent Yaks, always good to see you so much. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate all of it, your expertise. That is The Pulse for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Roop Raj. As always, it was great to be with you. Thanks. Really appreciate you.